It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company. On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
High shotgun snap for Jones. Hands off to Taylor. Looking. He's in. Touchdown. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y for Jonathan Taylor. Out of the gun is Jones. Empty set. Backs the pass on first down. He's got time. He's going to load one deep downfield for Alec Pierce. Into the end zone in double coverage. He makes the catch. Touchdown. A 37-yard strike. Jones to Alec Pierce. Daniel Jones, straight give to Jonathan Taylor. He's well over 100 yards. He adds to his total there, and he gets out. He's at the 30, 35, 40. He's going sideline. He's got a chance. Look at Pierce. He's at the 20, 10, 5. Touchdown! There's the record breaker for Jonathan Taylor. Ball between the hash marks. I formation. Counter give to Taylor. Cuts at the 5. He's going to score. Touchdown! Walk-off! The Colts in Berlin with the walk-off touchdown by Jonathan Taylor with his third rushing touchdown today. And in overtime, the Colts send everybody in Berlin home happy. Final score, Colts 31, Falcons 25.
He's the best running back in the NFL.
JT's the best in the league, man. Tell him, look, I'll scream it from the mountaintops. He's the MVP in my book.
Phenomenal game, some back and forth, a gritty win by our guys, obviously getting it to overtime there and finding a way. And congrats to JT setting the all-time franchise record for rushing touchdowns. Just a phenomenal game by him and our offensive line protecting. I thought it was phenomenal. Our guys battled like crazy, and just a hell of an experience over here playing this football game.
So that's how it sounded. Matt Taylor on the call. You heard there from Shane Steichen as the Colts, what feels like a week ago because of the fact that it was so early yesterday, winning in Berlin and heading into the bye now on a win. The Colts are 8-2, and they have now a stranglehold on the AFC South. No question about that. It almost feels as though, and I don't want to knock on wood here, or maybe I should knock on wood. I don't want to jinx anything, but it does feel like, in fact, the Colts are a fait accompli that they will win the division. There's still football to be played. I get it. There's a lot that can happen. I get it. And there are some signs where you look at it and there are things that I think you have to, dare I say it, clean up in the bye week and then heading into what is going to be a big one in Kansas City. But there is plenty to talk about over the course of today. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Kurt Gerald's filling in today for Eddie Garrison. Eddie, and this is exciting, actually. I did not realize this, but, you know, our friend Pat Sullivan from Sullivan Hardware, of course, you hear him on with JMV, and, you know, with Sullivan Hardware always doing the Christmas train up there on Keystone, and they had set aside a day to film all sorts of promotional stuff to get ready for Christmas. And then they decided that what they wanted to do is kind of like if you've ever seen Bad Santa, or if you've ever seen the episode of Seinfeld where Kramer gets a job as Santa and has Mickey working as the elf. They wanted a variety of different elves to film promotional stuff today out in the parking lot at Sullivan to get ready for the Christmas train, and hired Eddie. And this was supposed to be something that would take place on a weekend, but they're taking advantage of the unexpected snow today. So Eddie is doing his part in filling in as a Christmas elf, which is cool for the commercials. We'll look for that. I guess I don't know if that's online or where that's going to be. But I understand why he would take the day off today to take advantage of the snow. And that, to me, today's weather is perfectly symbolic of the Colts and the sports theme of the day in all aspects. Because what we know is this. Now, I'm not a meteorologist, and, you know, I don't pay as much attention to, like, the local weather as perhaps I should. I like all of the folks that do that. But we knew that there was supposed to be cold weather today. I thought I had seen over the course of last week, they were saying, like, hey, you know, be careful because at the beginning of next week, it's going to dip down into possibly even the single digits at night with a wind chill. But don't worry, because by the end of the week, we're back into the 50s. Okay, fine. So when you hear that, Little bit of a blip on the radar of, okay, it's going to be a little bit chilly. And then the snow comes, and it's completely unexpected. It's completely out of nowhere to my understanding and my knowledge. You know, a dust here, there, sure. But like literally a snow. That's not a blizzard. I get it. But there is measurable, trackable, visible snow. And no one really saw that coming. There are those that can't stand it because it means that it is forecasting that we're going to have a long winter. And there are those that love it because it's beautiful and it's aesthetic and it's calming and it's kind of quiet when it snows outside. And that's exactly where we stand right now with the Colts, with Indiana football, with the Pacers, in all aspects of the local teams. There is this unexpected surprise that we maybe thought there was a little something there, but we had no idea the measurable, trackable evidence before our very eyes of what's happening. And you can look at it and say it's a beautiful thing, or you can look at it and say, I don't know, there's a little bit of pause for concern. And each and every storyline, beginning with the Colts, that was a vintage for the 2025 Colts performance. Because what you had in that game was Jonathan Taylor doing Jonathan Taylor things. And yes, I readily admit I was one of them 3 to 4 years ago or whatever it was that Jonathan Taylor was holding out and we called him Twiggy. That was like 2 years ago. And we got tired of hearing about Jonathan Taylor. And I kept saying, look, the NFL today, Taylor is a wonderful player, but the running back is a fungible position. It is one that if you have an elite one, sure, that's great, but you don't win in the 2020s with elite running back play. And I really felt that way. And with the roster and the way that it was built for the Colts, and at that time thinking that Anthony Richardson was going to be their quarterback, you know, that was what I thought in that time. And credit to Chris Ballard. Credit to Shane Steichen. Credit to Daniel Jones. And credit to Jonathan Taylor. They have proven that narrative wrong. Because they are winning in 2025 and doing it, yes, with balance, but with a game-changing player that is allowing the Colts to not just salt games away, but rather take hold and stranglehold of games as well. And the Colts winning that game against Atlanta in Berlin was a vintage Jonathan Taylor performance. Beyond that, I mean, that was a historic Jonathan Taylor performance. But it accentuated other areas of the Colts. And what it means now is that we have this beautiful surprise. When you look out and you see the majesty and the tapestry of the snow up into, in this case, still leaves on the trees, it's a beautiful aesthetic thing. And you say to yourself, this is glorious. What an introduction into the holiday season and the Thanksgiving and the turn of autumn and getting set for winter. This snow that came out of nowhere, and it's a beautiful thing. But it does forecast potential issue if you're not prepared for it. And the same is true of the Colts. I'm not here to be Debbie Downer by any stretch of the imagination, because what they are doing is a glorious, beautiful thing. And it introduces now, heading into what we hope to be the home stretch of a season that is going to give us all kinds of gifts to unwrap. A win in the AFC South, into the playoffs, a home playoff game, the potential of an AFC title. All of those things start dancing in your head when you look out and you see that snow. And when you look out and you see that the Colts are 8-2, whoever would have guessed it? But it is also true that when you see the snow, you think to yourself, okay, long tunnel of winter is upon us. Early sunsets, scraping of the windshield, things that can be problematic. If you're a pessimist. And I'm not, but I'm a realist. And the reality is that the Colts, as great as that win was, and you take it for that heading into the bye, no doubt about that. And it was fabulous. And what they've done this year is the unexpected. And I'm here for it. But do you also look at that game and say, okay, red zone inefficiency. 4 empty trips, I think it was, into the red zone, right? And yes, that's offset when you get an 80-yard touchdown run on another play. I get it. But this is an offense that had been clicking on such efficient cylinders, with Daniel Jones constantly making the right play, that you wonder in that situation, okay, was anybody else thinking to themselves like, man, it just seems like all of a sudden just one little piston's misfiring. That happens, right? It gets cold for the first time and you're driving, you're like, what is that weird noise? And then you read about it and it's like, oh, occasionally like a bearing underneath your suspension can freeze up and it makes just a weird noise, but don't worry about it. Turn up the radio and it'll all be fine. It works itself out. Maybe that's what this is, right? The fact that Daniel Jones started to make people wonder and people became curious of, gosh, is it midnight in fact? Is all of a sudden reality kicking in here where Daniel Jones, who was 19 of 26 for I think 255, but he's starting to turn the ball over. And that's the one thing about this team that got them where they are now, is the fact they had taken care of the football. They'd taken care of the football. When it came down to it, though, he threw a beautiful pass to Tyler Warren in that overtime. I mean, perfect. On a 4th down, you need a couple yards. Perfect ball to Tyler Warren. They had multiple plays where Daniel Jones, when it was most needed, stepped up and made the plays necessary. And once again, Tyler Warren, when you most needed it, who was the guy that was the difference maker? What's the difference between that last year's Colts and this year's Colts? A big one, Tyler Warren. A big one. Defensively, late in the game, Sauce Gardner. Yeah, did he have plays where he had fallen down, he was late to the ball, he got a bad jump? Maybe. But when it came down to it and the game was on the line and Atlanta had their possession, they were able to bring Sauce Gardner basically right to the line. They were able to pack everybody in and say, you know what, Sauce Gardner is on that left side. We'll let him do his thing, and that allows us to then kind of bunch up and get a little bit more aggressive. And how much of that is because of the fact that Atlanta knew he was there, the Colts knew he was there, and allowed them to Lou Anarumo to open things up a little bit. I think to an extent, and you have to be optimistic about that, even though there were a couple of plays where you thought, 2 first-rounders for that? In the end, though, I thought it balanced itself out. Is the kicking game of concern? Because Michael Badgley misses a field goal and an extra point, right? But when it came down to it, you didn't need it because you win in walk-off fashion because of the fact that you have Jonathan Taylor, who was the game changer. My point simply being, it was an awesome performance. It was an awesome win. It was a fun trip for so many people. When I say awesome performance, I mean by Taylor. But there are little signs, and Mike Chappell's going to join us about 1 o'clock today, and we're going to talk about this, little signs of where you could see reason for concern. And they have plenty of time to get that fixed. I don't know what's going on with the offensive line, because this is the second game in a row now where there have been issues. Daniel Jones got punched in the mouth, literally. And you cannot have the guy that is soon to be your franchise quarterback. You've got to protect him better than that. You can't have your quarterback sitting there bleeding from the mouth late in the game. Makes for great visuals, makes for great imagery. But at the same time, with Daniel Jones, you've got to do a better job of protecting, because one thing that we learn here and one thing that we're starting to see is the fact that he does have that tendency to turn the football over. And that's what the New York Giants have been telling us forever, right? New York Giants fans have been telling us forever. Daniel Jones, you folks in Indianapolis think you've got the next Joe Montana. You think you got the next Tom Brady. You think you got the next, dare we say it, Peyton Manning. But be careful. Be careful. Because he is a guy that can turn it over. He's a guy that can get careless and throw a pass where you're wondering what's going on. And he's a guy that can, all of a sudden, if the pocket breaks down, fumble the football. And we saw it yesterday. And credit to Daniel Jones, he was able to overcome that. But you've got to protect and keep him clean. You've got to. Because what you don't want is him to get into the rut where taking care of the football becomes an issue. Quarterbacks, though, late in games, to me, what defines a quarterback is when they've had games where there could be, for a lot of them, like the ghosts in the back of their head, but they're able to rule that all out when it comes down to it and make plays. And having Jonathan Taylor there helps for certain. But again, threw a really good pass to Tyler Warren, extended some drives, and I thought when it came down to it was what you wanted. Which is similar to what we saw on Saturday in Happy Valley for Indiana. And I have no idea how this came to be. But one of the things to me that is the craziest, most unexpected part of the weekend, aside from the snow, okay? We heard the possibility there'd be a flurry, but we didn't expect there to be measurable, trackable snow. We knew there was the possibility that Indiana was still going to be right there as the number 2 playoff-ranked team in the country. But what we didn't know is how much that was in the head of Ohio State, which is the weirdest thing in the world to me. How in the world, if you're an Ohio State football fan, do you push your chest out at any single opportunity given to talk about how you are, without question, the preeminent college football program in America, the reigning national champion, the team that has NFL studs all over the place? How do you push your chest out with that and then at the same time sit there and spend your entire Saturday night as a keyboard warrior talking trash to Indiana? Indiana. If I'm Ohio State, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know what? This is awesome. Unblemished. Wide receivers in the NFL all over the place. Quarterback that's playing at a high level. Bring it on. And this is going to be the first time in nearly a half decade we're going to beat Michigan. That's what I'd be saying. Instead, I'm sitting there saying to myself, I've got to worry about what people are saying about Fernando Mendoza, and I've got to compare it to what my quarterback did against Penn State. It's the weirdest, most insecure thing ever. But at the same time, what Ohio State fans fail to realize is you talk to any other college football program in America. You talk to fans of Texas. You talk to fans of Penn State. You talk to fans of Georgia. Talk to fans of Florida. Talk to fans of Clemson. Talk to fans of USC. And you ask any of them, who is the one fan base that would be the one that would be the most panties in the bunch insecure about a program that has been absolutely naught for an entire century? And when they look over their shoulder and see that they're actually stealing headlines, would be the most insecure about it. And every one of them would say, oh, it's Ohio State. No question, it's Ohio State. Ohio State is the guy at the party that is crushing the cans against his forehead, thinking everyone's laughing at him. Or thinking everyone's laughing with them, I should say, and they're laughing at him. That's Ohio State, right? What I know is this. Indiana, which has I'm going to list for you right now every significant moment of national importance in the history of Indiana football. That is the completion of my list. It is a program that going into the weekend has lost more games than anybody in the history of Division I. Okay? It is the losingest program going into the weekend of any program in the history of Division I college football. Indiana football, which has had in contention for the Heisman Anthony Thompson, that should have won it, by the way, and lost it to Andre Ware. Antoine Randall, which finished, I think, 6th in the Heisman balloting. You know, in Eisenberger, back when they went to the Rose Bowl, I think got some Heisman votes. They've had a few here and there. But for the most part, it is a program that has been stuck in below mediocrity. And then they go into a game in Happy Valley against Penn State, a preseason top 10 team, and it's been a disastrous year for Penn State, a disastrous year. And for Indiana, you go in now in a year that started with, gosh, they've got 2 big road games, Oregon and Penn State. They took care of Oregon. The bet, it is still, whether you want to jump up and down about it and whatever else. The bottom line is, for a Big Ten team, the Indiana win at Oregon is the most impressive on the resume of any team in college football, period, this year, period. They were ranked inside the top 5. They are still ranked inside of the top 8 in the college football playoff ranking, and Indiana went and beat them on the road in a true road game. And then Indiana went to Penn State, and yes, they trailed. And guess what? You know what great teams do? Great teams find ways to win games where they don't play their best. And that's what Indiana did. And the way Indiana did it, did Fernando Mendoza throw an interception in that game to put his team in jeopardy? Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And then his team gave him opportunity to make good on that and go down and win the game. And I don't care whether it was against Penn State or against Northview Middle School. When you are facing a sack off the first play of a drive where you've got to go in under 2 minutes and go down the field and your best wide receiver is out and your line is banged up and you go down the field and you hit routinely, and yes, he had guys that made unbelievable catches for him. No doubt about it. Did he get help from his receivers? Yes. But he still had to have the moxie to stand there in the pocket and make plays when they needed it. And that's what he did. And at the end of the game, that catch by Omar Cooper, that catch, it was an unbelievable act of body contortion and balance and presence of mind and wherewithal, all of those things. What no one talked about was the fact that the vertical leap that was possible, and that does, yes, Mendoza threw the ball high, but he threw it where only the receiver could get it. And he probably overthrew it. He probably sailed it too high. But nonetheless, that catch and the leaping ability of it was unbelievable for Indiana. And yes, the reality is this. The reality is that play, whether you like it or not, Heisman Trophy winners have Heisman moments. Does that mean he's going to win the Heisman? I don't know. But what it means is a program that is the losingest in the history of college football all of a sudden now finds itself in a position where it's trying to hold on to the possibility of getting a bye, getting a home game in the college football playoff, a ton on the line, and their veteran leader quarterback, who's new to the program but has been around college football, takes them down the field and makes a play at the end of the game that wins the game and overcomes a mistake he made earlier, because great players and great teams find ways to win when all the chips are down. And that's what Indiana did. And Indiana fans loved it, and Indiana fans were enjoying it, and college football fans were enjoying it. It was the play of the day in college football. It was the play of the year in college football, whether you want to admit it or not. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of it. And for a guy that already was in the discussion for the Heisman, when he had that moment, the natural, instinctive thing for anybody to say is, there's his Heisman moment, doesn't mean that he just won the Heisman. It means that if he does go on to win it, that's the play that's going to be seen in the highlight reel. When you watch a movie and you see a particular scene in a movie and you say to yourself, that's the scene right there, that if this guy wins or this woman wins the Oscar, that's the clip they're going to play from this movie. Right there, that moment. And that's all it was. You could see it right there in that moment. Does anybody at Indiana think that Indiana right now on paper, man-to-man across the board, is better than Ohio State? Probably not. But what Indiana fans know is that Indiana is right there now in the national conversation in college football. And Ohio State, who is the reigning national champion and by all account light years ahead of everybody else, for whatever reason, has to spend their free time talking about Indiana. It's awesome. It's awesome. You know, when Indiana was in their prime, rocking and rolling in basketball, or Purdue right now is the best program in college basketball, I don't see them having to sit there and talk about and jump up and down defending themselves over the talk of Jim Jackson as an All-American basketball player. Or, you know, whatever Ohio State has going on. Because, yeah, it's Ohio State basketball. They're good. But when they had great years, it's like, yeah, they're really good. The Ohio State-Indiana games of the early 90s were awesome. But in no way, shape, or form did I hear Indiana having to defend itself against Ohio State as a national basketball elite program. It's just weird. It's weird, but I love it. I'm here for it. Indiana's in the head of Ohio State. I'm here for it. I love it. And the guy that was on the call, not just for that, but also in a game where Shaka Smart's team gave up a century mark of points in college basketball. And yes, Purdue, we got to talk about Purdue as well, number one in the country. And again, the fact they're number one, snow outside, looks beautiful. Also, little bit of a caution that has to go with that where there are some warning signs there. But we're focusing on the positives and the beauty and the aesthetic of it all for all the teams today. And that includes Indiana, both football and basketball. And the voice of it, Don Fisher, is going to join us next. Mike Chapo, 1 o'clock today. Trey Essex, former Colts offensive lineman, who broke down for me the film of what the Colts offensive line is doing or not doing and where that may, dare I say it, forecast for things down the road. That's coming up 1:30. Don Fisher, Other Side, Monday edition, Query & Company on the Fan.
Mendoza, who was just hammered all day long and pressured all day long and made every throw at the end of that performance that was just spectacular.
I also thought, Don, and this is the sign of a great team or a well-coached, well-balanced team. You know, when we know, and Elijah Surratt has been a fabulous player for Indiana, and he's out due to injury, and Charlie Becker comes in and basically matches his season total in terms of receptions, but he made big catch after big catch, and I thought he was obviously outstanding as well. And I hate to say this as a disrespect and say, were you surprised by that? But how much do you tip your cap to Charlie Becker also rising to the occasion?
Well, I watched him in practices the last 2 years now, and even as a freshman last year, you could see that this guy had the tools and the talent to be really good at some point if he continued to work, which obviously he's done. And he's had just a couple of opportunities this year leading up to this ball game until last week, of course, when he did play in replace of Elijah, when he had a slight injury to his lower leg. And they were being very cautious with it. And then this week, he didn't play again, which means that they're making sure that he is completely healthy when he does come back. But Charlie stepped in both those ball games, made some catches, nice catches last week and this week, just spectacular. 118 yards on 7 receptions, didn't drop a ball. He played just extraordinarily well. And his talent level is, he's one of the 2 or 3 fastest guys on this Indiana football team. He's 6'4", he's long, and so he's got size that helps him, and along with his speed, he's going to be spectacular for this ball club in the future, too.
Charlie Becker, who is a sophomore, by the way, out of Nashville, Tennessee, stepping up for Indiana in that game. Don, you mentioned Mendoza and the fact that, that first play of the drive when he got sacked, and he didn't just get sacked. Penn State was aggressive, right? And you think, oh, boy, here we go. In terms of Penn State getting to Mendoza, I know that the offensive line, that there are guys that are hurt. But was there anything differently that is being done in the way that Indiana is being defended, or is this simply a matter of attrition and new faces in front of Mendoza?
Well, it's probably a little bit of a combination. Drew Evans has been out now for 2 weeks in the offensive line. He's a very talented offensive lineman, has done a good job. He got hurt last year at the end of the season, too. This one I don't think is season ending, but how long he's out for the time being, we just don't know. It may be another couple of weeks, and he may not play again in this regular season. I think he would be ready to come back if he has that opportunity in postseason play, which I think Indiana will have, but we'll see. You don't want to get carried away, and I know that sounds like coach speak and stuff like that, but I've been around Indiana football for a long time, and I don't get ahead of myself, if you know what I mean. That being said, I do think the offensive line was taken advantage of a little bit in this game, but part of that was due to the fact that Penn State, they have really good players, and this is a good football team. They just ran into a buzzsaw, well, not a buzzsaw, but they ran into all kinds of struggles here in the last 4 or 5 ball games in which they lost. Their coach gets fired. This team was playing for something on Saturday because Indiana goes in there as the number 2 ranked team. They hadn't played a home game in 3 weeks. Penn State I'm talking about now. And they go in there as the number 2 ranked team in the country, unbeaten at that point. This made their season if they beat Indiana, and they didn't. Now, they still have enough tools to go in the next 3 games, win those games, because I think they're capable of beating anybody they play at this point the rest of the season. But this team, this was their Rose Bowl. This was their bowl game. It was their college football playoff game, whatever you want to call it. This was the game that they wanted to point to, and they wanted to win badly. And they had a great game plan against Indiana. They put pressure on Fernando Mendoza the entire ball game. He got hit many times and still hung in there and did what he had to do. But that offensive line, I guarantee you, that's the one area that I know Curt Cignetti is going to look at very closely after the film and he will have some things to say to that offensive line after that ball game, because obviously it wasn't good enough, a good portion of that ball game.
Up next for Indiana is Wisconsin. Then it's the bucket game, and if they hold serve, then it would be into the Big Ten championship game. Still football to be played between now and then. Don, I'm curious of this. I saw so much discussion of this in a fun way. My friends that went to Indiana and fans of Indiana, everybody was talking about on Saturday evening. I really think that like Upstairs Pub and Nick's and Kilroy's and all of them, they probably already were blowing up the still frame of that catch to be able to put it on the wall in the establishments in Bloomington, right? And in terms of plays, basketball, there are a gabillion of them. I mean, Keith Smart's shot and Jay Edwards and the Watt shot and, on and on and on. But in terms of football plays and the time that you have done it, Don, what other plays come to mind that would be as emphatic and exciting a football play as that one that you saw?
Well, there have been a lot of great plays, individual plays and things like that in ball games through the years. The one thing I can say about that catch and that particular play was how important it was at the time it was done. I mean, you see really great plays from a lot of great athletes around the country every college weekend. Everybody's looking at that play. This guy brought it down with one hand, pulled it in with one arm, all that kind of thing. You see all these kinds of things that happen. The question is, when did they happen, and were they a game changer, or were they the difference in a ball game? And that was certainly that. And I can't remember. I've got a bad memory. I can tell you that, Jake. I don't have the memory that a lot of people have. I know you have a better memory than I ever thought I had, so I know this. But the fact of the matter is, I can't think of anything I saw that was better from a football standpoint at Indiana than that particular play.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and again, all aspects of it, the throw, the moxie, the leaping ability, the body balance, the officiating, the radio call, all of it, right? It was a pretty awesome moment for certain. Let's get to basketball real quick, Don, before we let you go. Shaka Smart is a great basketball coach, and his teams, are known for their defensive intensity. And for that reason, I thought it was super impressive what Indiana was able to do by getting 100 up on Marquette. 100-77 was the final score. Tucker DeVries had lightning in a bottle there for a while, finished with 27. But what I like about this team, and I watched them against Alabama A&M as well, is they move the ball around quickly, and they have multiple guys that can score quickly off of a pass, but then at the same time can reset back into a structured offense. And I like the way that they move the ball around. What jumped out at you about that game against Marquette?
Well, obviously the shooting jumped out because they had 27 assists on 33 baskets. And they shot 50% from the three-point line in the contest. When's the last time Indiana did that with 28 three-pointers being shot? And it's not to say that we haven't had that kind of performance before, but Tucker DeVries had 24 points in the first half, just one three-point field goal in the second half. And then who steps up in the second half? Lamar Wilkerson. He had one three-pointer in the first half. He had 5 more in the second half. They both were 6 of 9, 6 of 10 in the ball game. And to have 2 guys that step up like that, and then there are other guys in this team that are capable of knocking down threes to help out. I just think that's the one thing that impresses me more than anything else is the fact that Indiana has multiple guys who can shoot the three now. And the fact that they spread the ball all the time, they are not selfish players in any way, shape, or form, and they love playing together. And to say that about a roster that's just been put together in the last 5 months, and to go on a couple of exhibition games in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then to play a couple of exhibitions here, and now 2 regular season ball games, one of which is against a very quality opponent, Marquette. This team has something special going on right now, and if they can maintain that through this season, they're going to be better than people ever thought they could be.
Don, I know that making a comparison between Indiana and then, dare I say it, Purdue is dangerous from a fan base standpoint. I get it. But I wanted your thought on this. I was watching Lamar Wilkerson, and I'd seen him a little bit. Obviously this is a guy that has scored a ton of points over the course of his college career. but I had seen him in the Alabama A&M game in particular, and I'll tell you who it reminded me of, and he's a bigger version of it, but he strikes me, if you recall, Carson Edwards that played at Purdue, and by that I mean he has kind of a quick step, lightning in a bottle tendency about him, where if he hits a shot or two, it looks like you think to yourself, well, Katie bar the door. This guy all of a sudden just can he's in a zone automatically. What has been your observation of him offensively, and am I off base with that comparison?
No, he is lightning in a bottle. And if he hits the first couple of shots, you're in for a tough night because he can flat shoot the basketball. He was 8 of 19 yesterday, but his hot hand took place in the second half when they needed it. And if you remember that game yesterday, they got in early foul trouble, and there was multiple guys that were with 2 or 3 fouls, not 3, but at least 2 fouls early in the ball game. And it looked like Indiana was going to have some problems offensively with the rest of the day, especially if anybody got more foul trouble, which they did as the game went on. But it was one guy that took place in the first half, one guy in the second half. But Wilkerson, in my opinion, and I've watched him in practices as much as I've watched him in the other ball games that he's played so far, in exhibitions and the San Juan trip and all that kind of thing. The guy could just flat shoot the basketball. And that's the reason that Darren DeVries went after him, because he knew what kind of a shooter he was. And that's how much value I think Darren puts on guys that can shoot the three, because this is a game that the game-changing things that happen in basketball these days oftentimes are with three-point shots. And if you've got multiple guys that can put those shots in the basket, you've got something special there, and I think this team has that.
Indiana, Wednesday night, taking on Milwaukee. That game is a 7 o'clock start. You can hear it, of course, on these radio stations. Don, a pleasure as always. Football and basketball-wise, both. Really good weekend for Indiana sports. Appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk to you soon, all right?
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jake.
All right, Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, joining us on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Again, a reminder with Java House, Jake25 is the discount code for everything at javahouse.com. You can also put in my name or the radio station name in the search bar at javahouse.com and get the fan bundle, which is the Colombian coffee, which is fantastic. The cold brew, but it's also good hot brew as well. And then the Liquid Science Arctic Freeze, also the orange flavoring of that. That is a hydration drink, and the Wrangler Energy as well. All available at javahouse.com. We come back. I had asked your thoughts on the Colts in 10 words or fewer, and I'll read you some of the highlights next. Anthony says it's been years since the Colts have been this resilient. Jonathan Taylor, best running back in Colt history, says Andrew. He might be. He's got certainly now the franchise record for touchdowns in a year, right? So in that regard, yeah. You know, you look at what he is doing. Adam, JT gets anything he wants in new contract next year. Indy Chick, Jonathan Taylor is the most valuable player in the league. And I think that was the overwhelming sentiment amongst most. Good enough to overcome mistakes, team plays for each other, says Gary. However, there are those that also, as I talked about earlier, when you look at that snow outside, it's beautiful and you love to soak it in, but it comes with a forecast of a warning of what could be around the corner. And someone else says, off to amazing start, but seems like things might be crumbling. Crumbling's probably a tough word for it. But yes, I do think that there are areas that you have to be concerned about. You have to be concerned about the turnovers of late and the inability to take care of the football. And you've got to be a little bit concerned about another area that seemingly was one that Chris Ballard had completely taken care of. And Mike Chappell is one of those that I know has concern about it. And we'll bring on the Dean of Writers and let him explain what I'm talking about next. it's somewhat calming, but it also can forecast that things can be a little bit gloomy around the bend. And to an extent, while it is fabulous that the Colts are up to an 8-2 start, they are heading into the bye. They then get ready to go to Kansas City. There were yesterday perhaps some things that forecast a potential issue. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he is with CBS 4 and WXA on Fox 59, Mike Chappell. And Chap, let's begin with that. I don't mean to be pessimistic because it was a big win. Jonathan Taylor was elite as he has been all year. But there were, and you pointed it out, there were a couple of areas that if it's not cleaned up, to use that term, it can be a bad forecast for the Colts. And I'm talking about the offensive line. You seem to have some concern over that.
Well, 12 sacks in 2 games. And yeah, if they don't get it cleaned up, I mean, Riley Leonard is one play away. And which one of these plays is close enough to get Daniel Jones knocked out? So, and that's what's alarming is for the first 8 games it was like 9 sacks and things were going pretty good. And all of a sudden, the last 2 games, teams have really exploited the edge, and they get pressure up the middle. But it's just hard. I was looking here because I'm a stat nerd and I spend more time with stats. This franchise is 3-24 when it has at least 7 sacks. So it was 2-24 before yesterday. It's just too hard. These aren't a -2 rush by Jonathan Taylor. These are -6, -7, or strip sacks. What Jones has had is 7 turnovers in the last 2 games. That's not sustainable. And this cannot be cured personnel-wise. They're not going to go mixing and matching and bringing up, Jalen Travis to play. No, they've got to figure something out. We talked to Tony Sperano Jr. last week. I was involved with Reggie Wayne, so I didn't get it. I need to go back and listen to what position coach had to say. But this you can't keep doing this. And again, after the Pittsburgh game, somebody said, "Well, did the Steelers find the blueprint?" Well, I said, "Yeah, you get a blueprint if you've got T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith." Well, that wasn't the case yesterday, and they still got after the quarterback, and it's just too hard. And we saw him with the bloody lip, which is, players bleed every game. But when your quarterback shows his bloody mouth through his face mask, that's not a good thing. The players have the week off, so this will be on the coaching staff to figure out what's wrong. Not is something wrong. Something's wrong. You can't say, well, nothing's wrong. So this will be a scheme thing. Now, I don't know whether, and this Rick Venturi could maybe address this, but is this a case of Shane Steichen getting in that Bruce Arians mindset that we're going to send, and Tom Moore, we're going to send out 5 guys, and you deal with that, and we'll deal with protecting with 5. And that's a result of the quarterback getting beat on, or is it something else? I understand having so many offensive options to throw to and to run with that maybe you say our scheme will beat your pressure and all that. I don't know. My mind's not that advanced. But to say that nothing's wrong would be ridiculous and say, it's going to be a tweak. Well, it's not going to be a tweak. You got your quarterback killed the last 2 weeks, semi-killed the last 2 weeks. So that's something, fortunately, I think they've got the week to kind of self-evaluate, as they say. So, but they've got to get it fixed because you can't keep giving up 5 and 7 sacks in a game to where, 3 or 4 of them are forced fumbles. That's unsustainable.
Do you think, Chap, that teams started, and by the way, Anthony Richardson would be available when they go into Kansas City? He is available off of the injured reserve. Now, whether or not that means he's active and becomes the immediate backup, I don't know. But for those that are curious, Anthony Richardson's eligibility for the Kansas City game, theoretically, based on his IR placement of 4 games, he would be eligible to be on the roster when they go to Kansas City. But Did Pittsburgh expose a little bit about Indianapolis and the way that they attacked the Colts offensive line and the way that they maybe stunted or got after Daniel Jones that then is now going to be replicated in a copycat league? Or is this simply the case, Chap, where the line lost a little bit of confidence and went up against two, talented front groups?
Well, I think they exposed something. I would have thought that after getting smothered by Pittsburgh, that would have been the shock to get things fixed. Hey, we got this, we got to get this fixed. And then it was, I don't know if it was worse or not. Maybe, I don't know if it was worse or not. Pittsburgh still might have been worse because of all the turnovers. But something's up. So they found something. And again, I don't know whether it's something schematically with the offensive line. I don't believe for a second that this offensive line, talent-wise, has lost much. I think Bernard Ryman's had some ups and downs at right or at left tackle. But, and again, I just don't know if they're refusing. Oh, they've got a lot of multiple tight end sets. So they don't send five guys out all the time at all. But, and like I say, everybody doesn't have T.J. Watt and Highsmith. No, but they've got good players, really good players. And if a team, copycat league, absolutely. And if somebody finds a weakness, and this is 2 games. This isn't, that was Pittsburgh. No, this is 2 games in a row. And if you don't think that Kansas City isn't sitting there and saying, okay, what's going on here and why can't they protect their quarterback? Of course they are. And if you don't find what's wrong schematically or whatever your players are doing fundamental-wise, it doesn't fix itself. So that's with all the fact that they found a way to win yesterday was on Jonathan Taylor's brilliance, without question. If he doesn't do that at that level, they lose. And you can't expect a running back to go for 240 and 3 touchdowns. And I saw another note here that he set a franchise record. Again, when you set franchise records on a franchise that's got Lenny Moore and Edgerrin James and Eric Dickerson and Marshall Faulk, you're doing something. Most total yards in a game, 286. I mean, that's ridiculous. So that's why that you can't expect your running back to save you every week. So they've got to get the offensive line. They've got to get the protection fixed, whatever that is. Those guys get paid much better money than I do. We just get paid to criticize and point out what you're doing wrong. So it's on them over these next 5 or 6 days. So yes, they get some time off to recoup, but they've got to figure out what's up with the pass protection.
Mike Chappell is our guest. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Chap, how would you assess the performance of Sauce Gardner?
Pretty good considering he practiced, 3 times or whatever. He had the obvious slip on the 2-point conversion. That goes into the category of stuff happens. I thought he played well. Almost, he's killing himself for not getting a pick 6. He is. He jumped that route. And those are plays that he makes in his sleep, although maybe that's why he's got 3 interceptions in his career, is he doesn't always corral the play. I thought he played well. I really did. And they put him on London near the end. I thought they might put him on Drake London more, and they didn't. It was like selective. But at the end of the game, when they had to get a stop, they did. So the expectation is going to be over the moon on what people are thinking. But I thought it was a good first game, and then hopefully they get Mooney Ward back for KC, and then I thought the defense played pretty well. Gave up that touchdown at the end that was concerning, but then they made the stop in overtime. Zaire Franklin made 2 great plays, including the sack to give the Colts a chance to close it out. But to have two corners where you can take away the outside, and then you can focus Jalen Jones or Kenny Moore on the inside with a tight end or whatever, that's real. That bodes well. Now I'll tell you, losing DeForest Buckner is huge. It's absolutely huge, and there's no guarantee he comes back this season. There's not. With a neck injury, we've seen. I always default to bad things on neck injuries or back injuries. So for the next 3 games they're without him, and there's not even remotely a guarantee that he comes back this year. And it's hard for me to say who's more important, DeForest Buckner or Sauce Gardner, which is crazy to say.
Boy, I think it might be Buckner, though, right?
Well, that's where I'm going. It's so hard for them to play without him because the drop-off from him
Correct.
to the next guys is so great to where – now, I'm not saying the drop-off from Sauce Gardner to Blackman or whomever at corner is not huge, it is, but we've seen how they really struggle to play defense without Buckner. And but they're going to be without him. And if I'm the Colts, I'm saying, he won't be back, and we got to go on without him. And if he comes back, good for us. So that's something we got to watch going forward because he's not going to be here for the next 3 games.
Chap, do you think is Lou Anarumo with Sauce Gardner? And it's very early to know this, but from what you could tell, in particular in the second half of that game, with no DeForest Buckner there, but when you have Sauce Gardner lined up, is that allowing them to line up differently and play defensively with a little bit different setter formation?
I think it's allowing them to press a little bit more. It's probably allowing them to blitz a little bit more. They blitz Nick Cross some, and again Zaire Franklin on some blitzing. So, yeah, whenever you got better players, it gives you a chance to do things. And like I say, that's if they can get Mooney Ward back. It just gives you that much more. And all I can think of, which is it's not about Lou, but it's like Gus Bradley saying, "Hey, where were these guys the last several years when we were deficient at positions?" So they're getting healthy, except for Buck. And like I say, I think Mooney Ward was out there with trainers on whatever it was Thursday last week, which is a good sign. And hopefully he's out there next Wednesday when they come to practice. If not, then there's serious concern on him returning. So I would always prefer to have an edge pass rusher. I still would like better play from the defensive front, although without Buckner it's going to be tough. But to have the quality they've got in the back end is really encouraging. And with the teams they've got coming up, with Kansas City, they got a bunch of receivers. And Houston, maybe Nico Collins won't go off on them. So the defense should be getting better if they can find a way to compensate for not having their best defensive player.
Mike Chappell is our guest. Java House Peel and Pork guest line, CBS 4, WXA, and Fox 59, who he represents. Chap, with Shane Steichen, and I've seen a lot of not criticism per se, but eyebrow raise of Shane Steichen and the way that he's calling games now, and in particular inside of the red zone. And they've had some issues in the red zone. Where do you assess the way that they're calling offensive plays for the Colts?
Confidence. Does that go to arrogance? I don't know. But he's extremely confident, one, in his ability to call plays. He is. And he's extremely confident in his players. And a lot of times that's a really good formula, and sometimes it gets you in trouble. I thought they should have kicked the field goal in one of those, situations on 4th down. When you don't kick field goals, you're chasing points, and that can be a problem. No, it's just that's who he is, and it's great when it works, and when it doesn't work, why did you do that type of thing? But they had a big strong run of red zones. It was like 10 or 12 in a row. Touchdowns. Again, people need to understand that red zone efficiency is not scoring; it's touchdowns. And when you don't, you're leaving 4 points on the field, and if you go for it and don't make it, you're leaving 7. That's 7 points. And then when you have your kicker miss a field goal, I realize it was a 53-yarder, but I tell you, I'm watching these games, whenever I can, and I see guys miss 50-yard field goals occasionally. Seldom are they short. Normally they're, Mike Vanderjagt like where they go into to the right side of the stadium, and then you can't miss extra points. Gosh, you just can't miss extra points. So is that a concern? Well, you're thinking so, and then he knocks down a 44-yarder when you absolutely have to have it. So yeah, we'll see. I just think it's a supreme confidence in himself and Jim Bob and the offensive staff and supreme confidence in his players, and why not? I mean, Tyler Warren, I've been waiting for him to go off. You know, he's had some really nice 5 catches, 60 yards, 70 yards. He goes for 99, and the deep corner route with on that last drive was a great catch. I tell you, the 4th and 2 on that drive where he's kind of hit short of the sticks and carries the DB or breaks away from the DB was huge. So I understand the confidence / arrogance that they have, and most of the time I think it works, and when it doesn't, people scratch their heads. But again, if you don't do things 100% right, people are going to bitch and moan. And this league is never going to be about 100%. You know, I don't know what you want to be batting average wise. Keep in mind, in baseball, you hit 280 and you have a hell of a year. You might make the Hall of Fame. NFL, you go 28% and you're Brian Daboll and you're unemployed.
Chap, did you feel like, and Tyler Warren, I agree. First off, the catch that he had late, there was kind of an over-the-shoulder catch, and it was a beautifully thrown ball from Daniel Jones. Jones put it right where it needed to be. But I want to get back to Daniel Jones. What is your level of concern, or should we be concerned? It's one thing to say, yes, he is not being protected the way he was through the first, probably 7 games, certainly. But football protection that's what's been the bugaboo of Daniel Jones over the course of his career, or lack thereof. And that seemingly was put to rest. And now all of a sudden, that's starting to pop up a little bit. And one of the things that I always go back to, Chap, I always say, when you look at teams that don't win the Super Bowl, and you look at where their season ended and when, it is oftentimes a microcosm of the little things that they managed to avoid over the course of the year, but started to present themselves as a potential negative forecast. And I'm worried about Daniel Jones in terms of that football protection and whether or not we are actually now seeing the real Dr. Jekyll and we were fooled by Mr. Hyde. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I can't. I can't. You know, again, 7 turnovers in 2 games you can't do that. And you see guys get sacked all the time, but they're not losing the ball. So that's where it's got to be a little bit more. He's got to be a little bit more aware of pressure around him and ball security. He threw the ball, was it 21 times yesterday? Of course, the sacks sort of limit that, but you just can't be giving up strip sacks. You can't do it. You know, your pressure is your line is going to give up pressure and sacks, but you can't compound it with fumbles. You can't do it. That's a concern, and that's going to be when people. I still see where people saying that Ballard gave up too much for Sauce Gardner, 2 first-round picks, and all of this. And I'm in the camp that believes what that we may have talked about last week, but what that tells me is that they believe Daniel Jones is their quarterback of the future, because you've given away any realistic chance of finding one in the draft, although the draft picks you sent away should be very low draft picks. But I don't know how you move forward at quarterback if it's not Daniel Jones with all that you've done. And if he regresses to where it does resemble the Giants, to where he's starting to turn the ball over a couple times a game and all that. Remember, the first 8 games, they had no turnovers in six games. And with this offense, they're going to win. When they do, it's kind of like the Peyton Manning years. Not quite to that level. When Peyton and those guys didn't turn the ball over, they were almost impossible to beat, because they're going to put up 30 points because they were that good. And these guys aren't quite that good. But if they don't turn the ball over, they're going to score 30, 35 points just because they're that good. So, yeah, I was thinking Pittsburgh was a one-off with the 6 turnovers and 5 sacks, but this is 2 weeks in a row. And the only way you can say that's not true is, well, then how do you come back next game and the next game? And the schedule, as we've noticed, it gets tougher. Houston, I still don't know how they won the game. Well, they played Jacksonville, and Jacksonville did. But Houston's got maybe the best defense in the league. You got them twice. You got Seattle, who might be the best team in the league right now. And Frisco, I'm not sold on Frisco being that level. But the schedule's tougher. It just is. And you can't expect to have 7 sacks and 2 turnovers and a couple of missed kicks and think you're going to win in overtime. It just doesn't happen often. So, like I said, we go back to the original thing is they've got their work cut out for them coaching-wise over the next few days and then in the next week, because you can't keep doing this and expect to do what they've shown they can do when they don't turn the ball over and get their quarterback beat up.
Chap, one other thing before we let you go. Mike Chappell, our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. I don't know that we've had a chance to talk to you since the trade with Sauce Gardner. I'm curious your thought on this as somebody who's been around this a long time and knew Jim Irsay well. Do you believe that Chris Ballard making that move, or Chris Ballard in some of the things that we've seen, with a new owner and the buck stops here individual in Carly Irsay-Gordon, do you think this is an example of the general manager getting the green light from the owner of let's go, let's push in if you believe this is what we need to do, or I want you to do this because I think we can win now? Or is it more so the case of a general manager now having complete autonomy and flexibility to do as he chooses without the owner intervening?
Well, option one, Carly Irsay, and I know the description comes off bad. She's a hands-on owner. She is. I saw a note from Albert Breer or somebody where they had this discussion, and it was like, do you want? It was Carly to Chris Ballard, where she said, "Do you want to fix this with a Band-Aid, or you want to fix it long term?" Which was her way of saying, if you're going to fix it long term, make the trade. She certainly could have nixed this trade. She's the owner, for crying out loud. So this is a reflection that they're working together and probably on the same page. And it sounded like, Chris Ballard really wanted to do this, and then she sort of said, then do it. Do it, damn it. This is what we need to do. And somebody asked me if they thought Jim Irsay would have green-lighted this. And the Jim Irsay of the last year and a half, I don't know. But the Jim Irsay that was in full command physically and all of that, I think he would have, because he wanted to win as bad as anybody, and almost to a fault he did things to do that. But I think this showed how Chris Ballard and Carly Irsay are in lockstep, and there isn't a chance in hell that Chris Ballard strong-armed her into this trade. None. We know her involvement here. We know how she has learned on the job, and she's learned from her dad. And if she wanted to step up and say no, there would be no Sauce Gardner. There wouldn't be. But I think this just shows how her and Chris are on the same level and in agreement. And I would think that would make the fan base comfortable knowing whether you like Chris Ballard and how things have gone and all of that. That's another argument. But what they're doing now is trying to win now. Yes, now, but they didn't mortgage the future. This isn't now or bust, because a lot of these players are young. Gardner's 25. Now you've got to come back from not having first round draft picks, but they would have been picks 25, 26, 27 anyway. So I think they're both going together nicely moving forward.
Mike Chappell, you all right there, chap?
Yeah, I just
want to make sure.
The wrong way, so we're good. Yeah, don't.
Well, I know how that is, right? All right, Mike. Appreciate it as always, and look forward to talking to you. Actually, next week I'm off, but with the Colts on a bye. But I know that obviously we'll be talking to you. But certainly appreciate the time as always. All right.
Enjoy and be well, guys.
All right, appreciate it. Mike Chappell joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He talked about the offensive line and what might be different about this line. I think right now, if you had to pick one thing that you want to make sure in the bye week is taken care of, it's the O-line for the Colts, the way they're playing. And I reached out to somebody yesterday and said, look, you played in it. You've played in the Super Bowl. You've won Super Bowls. You played for the Colts. You were on the line, and you break down film to this day. Can you join me on the show? And Trey Essex said, absolutely. So he'll do it next. Could please, Kurt, the breaking news sounder. There's a new number one in college basketball in the AP poll. It is the Houston Cougars. And Purdue, despite having more votes for number one, is now second ranked in the country after their win that maybe some thought was closer than it should have been over Oakland over the weekend. Speaking of dropping from number one to number two, Indiana now is the second losingest program in college football history. That's because by way of their win against Penn State and Northwestern losing over the weekend, Northwestern now has lost more games in college football Division I than anyone in history. Indiana and Northwestern have jostled that dubious title back and forth. And joining us now, a guy that I'm sure thrilled to be back at number one, Trey Essex, the former Northwestern Wildcat, joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. And I would assume, Trey, now assuring that this is your only visit to the program after I pointed that out, correct?
That's a way to introduce me. Huh? Talking about how
about Super Bowl champion and Northwestern and Fort Wayne product Trey Essex. Is that better?
Much better. I appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, I want to get to this first and foremost, and I appreciate your time. I messaged you because I'm fascinated by the offensive line of the Colts and the fact that right at the time when I started talking about how they were playing as well as I think any offensive line unit in the NFL, your alma mater, Pittsburgh, I think, I'm not going to say exposed them, but they obviously got after Daniel Jones, and it seems like there might be some regression there. You've had a chance to look at it. What have you noticed about that Colts O-line?
I don't know if it's necessarily the Colts O-line that's struggling. Granted, like you said, I think the Colts still have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL, but the last couple of weeks they've given up some sacks, some pressures that they weren't giving up prior to. And so they're still running the ball great outside of the game they had against Pittsburgh. But, I mean, he had a record-breaking day yesterday, so the O-line was obviously doing something right. But as far as pass protection, they struggle. And I think it might just be a case of teams catching up to what Daniel Jones looks like in that Shane Steichen offense. And so he has to hold the ball a beat or two longer, and that's allowing the pressure to get to him.
So much of sports, Trey, can be mental. And I don't know, if you're a receiver, I don't know that it gets mental. And if you are a linebacker, I don't know if it gets mental. But the offensive line, seemingly, because you are involved directly on every single play, I am curious. If you get beat a play or two or a game all game long, does it carry over? Is there a hangover, and is there a danger in starting to overthink your movement?
There is some mental components there. The O-line is unique in the sense that it is the only position group where five guys have to work in unison together every single play. And with that comes a lot of pressure, because if you mess up one, you're letting down your guy to your left, you're letting down your guy to the right, and a lot of times the play doesn't even get started. And so that does carry over, and it also doesn't help that when we do give up a sack or two, it might be one or two plays, and we might have played great the entire game. One or two plays, and the common fan will say, that guy is horrible. That's a horrible offensive line. He gave up that sack. And that messes up your whole day, and that gets to you as an offensive lineman. The pressure and the expectations are higher at that position, I think, than any other, because we don't get any of the praise necessarily, but we definitely get most of the criticism.
Trey Essex is my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He was with the Steelers, won 2 Super Bowls, 05-11, then with the Colts in 2012, and the pride of Fort Wayne Harding. Trey, when you look at the line, Quentin Nelson obviously is an elite player. And I think that they've had, Bordellini's played really good, or played really well, I should say, at the center position. But when you look at the Colts offensive line, if you're able to assess it, I'm not going to say which one is the weak link per se, but where are they the most vulnerable? Or what's the area that seems to at times have a leak more than any other?
It seems that the right tackle spot. I was a big fan of Braden Smith, second rounder out of, where did he come from, Auburn, I think?
Correct.
Big fan of his. He's been there for a long time, and he's kind of been quiet, just going about his business, and has been very solid his entire career. I think he is struggling some in the pass protection this year. I think the Colts found a gem, and what's the right guard's name is Goncalves?
Gonzalez. Gonzalez is how it's pronounced, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think they found something in him. He's a big guy at 6'6", and so University of Pittsburgh guy, and I think they found something in him. But if there was some question and some weakness, it's the pass protection of Braden Smith. I think he's getting a little exposed over there.
And with that pass protection, Daniel Jones, Jones is fascinating because, Trey, we knew the narrative about Daniel Jones coming from New York, who, by the way, fired their head coach today, and Brian Dable. But the Giants, if you were to talk to Giants fans with Daniel Jones, they would say, all right, Indy, good luck with the turnover machine. And yet that has not been an issue until Pittsburgh and then yesterday in terms of the danger of him and the turnovers. How much of that, when you look at it, is defense is giving him different looks or aggression, and how much of that is just like a confidence or a repetition of movement with Daniel Jones?
It's definitely defense is giving him different looks. This Shane Steichen offense early on, especially with the way Jonathan Taylor has been playing and all the attention that he commands, it's been, I'm not going to say easy, but Daniel Jones hasn't had to do a lot. He hasn't had to really go through his progression because Shane Steichen is really good at scheming guys open. When guys are catching passes, they're usually wide open. When Tyler Warren's running down the field, he's usually wide open. Alex Pierce, that deep threat machine, he's getting guys open. And what Pittsburgh did a great job of is stopping Jonathan Taylor and then making that Colts offense one-dimensional and making Daniel Jones hold on to the ball and go through his progression. And you saw when he has to do that, he struggles. He struggles some. And so there is a concern with the Colts moving forward because you saw in the game versus Atlanta, that game went back and forth. They took the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands, and that was the recipe for their success. They gave the ball to Jonathan Taylor to the tune of 200 million yards. And so they were able to do that and effectively take the ball and eliminate the mistakes that Daniel Jones was making because he was turning the ball over. He was not seeing the field right. And I think that's a big concern of them moving forward.
Trey, I wanted to touch on something real quick before we let you go that you and I have discussed before. Trey Essex is my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. You and I have done, a fair amount of radio and pre-games and things like that in seasons past. And one of the things that I asked you, and at the time I was almost embarrassed to ask it because it seemed so elementary, but the answer to me was fascinating. And that is, we hear about run protection and we hear about pass protection. And as an offensive lineman, your job is to do both. Now, on run protection, you never go upright. I mean, you're just moving forward immediately upon snap. Pass protection is different. Why is there a difference in the way that you have to maneuver your body from one to the other, and which is more challenging?
As an offensive lineman, and I think most would agree with me, we like run blocking just simply because we're going forward, and with pass protection, you're going back. And usually when you're making contact with somebody in pass protection, that guy has a head of steam, or he definitely has the momentum, if anything else. And so just the simple body mechanics of going backwards while somebody's going forward and trying to get to a certain point where the quarterback is, it's challenging and it's tough. And you see that the teams that are good in the league are the ones that can effectively do that. And it's usually the quarterback getting the ball out fast, because you only pass protect so long before the defensive line or linebacker gets
so why not? Here's my dumb question. Okay, If you're in pass protection, why not block it like run protection? Why not just continue to move forward? Either what you're still staving people back, right? They don't know whether you're going to run or pass. So why the variation in the way that you handle it?
Well, there are many plays where you are coming off as if you're run blocking, and that is to confuse the defense. But there is a lot of room for error if you do miss. If it's a pass play and you miss doing run blocking technique, that angle is pretty significant and pretty direct to the quarterback. And so if you do a run blocking technique while you're pass protecting, you better not miss. You better get your hands on them and you better lock it in, because as soon as they see that quarterback drop back and they see that it's not a run play, you don't have a lot of time to adjust.
Okay, and finally, before we let you go, I've got to ask you about Pittsburgh, because you obviously, I know you still do a lot in terms of analyzing the Steelers. What's going on with Aaron Rodgers?
He had a bad game. He's been playing great, don't get me wrong. This offense, the way that Pittsburgh has been running it, is very simple, and Aaron has got the ball out fast. He has a young O-line, unproven O-line blocking for him. And when you're 41 years old and you can't get hit as much as you can, you got to get that ball out fast. But this past Sunday or yesterday, he just didn't have a good game. The throws that he normally makes, he didn't make. And so I think it's a one-off. I hope it's a one-off. But, yeah, he definitely just didn't have a good game. But that was an anomaly because he's been playing great for us this year.
Obviously, the hope for Pittsburgh fans would be that it's a one-off, right? But when you start getting up in age, you start to wonder, right? I mean, but we shall see what happens. Trey, I appreciate it. I know you got stuff to get to. I appreciate the time today and look forward to talking to you again, all right?
I appreciate it, my man.
Trey Essex joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. All right, when we come back, something that happened over the weekend in college football that got me thinking, made me ponder. I'll explain next.
7 p.m. a main hatchway gave in. He said, fellas, it's been good to know you.
Gordon Lightfoot
The captain wired in, he had water coming in.
sang about it
Ship and crew was in peril.
in the fact that it was 50 years ago today.
When his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
The Edmund Fitzgerald indeed would sink in Lake Superior with water coming over, and 15 miles from Whitefish Bay with iron ore that was to be delivered to Cleveland going down through Lake Superior. 29 men would die on the Edmund Fitzgerald. My college football pontification here in just a couple of minutes, but I did want to make mention of the fact when I was a kid, like most that are of my age group, and for that matter, many that probably still know of that song, you might not even know the backstory of it, with Gordon Lightfoot and the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. But the Edmund Fitzgerald was an iron ore, obviously, cargo ship that was initially developed in 1957. When Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company out of Milwaukee commissioned to the Great Lakes Engineering Works Corporation to come up with a ship. They did. And in 1958, she set sail for the first time, named the Edmund Fitzgerald. That is because at the time, Edmund Fitzgerald was the chair of the board of the Northwestern Mutual Life Company. And on this day 50 years ago, actually, I believe it was in the late night last night when it was set to sail, but it was on November the 10th of 1975 when the Edmund Fitzgerald took on water along Lake Superior. And it is never known exactly what caused the ship to go down, but there was, and still is, to this day you can listen to, and it's both fascinating and eerie to hear the radio transmission back to the Anderson, which was the ship that was running just behind the Fitzgerald. And the last radio transmission was at about 7 p.m. when famously or infamously, if you want to go that way, the captain of the Anderson had said that, yeah, the last that I heard from the Fitzgerald, she said she was holding her own with the water that was coming over, but the lights had gone out and they lost the satellite transmission, or if you will, the radar of where the Fitzgerald was, and they knew it was in trouble. By the time they got a hold of the Anderson, it had passed the area that they believed they lost the Edmund Fitzgerald, and asked the Anderson if it could turn around and go back, and he said, look, I can do that, but the water is tremendously large. The sea is too large, and they did eventually turn back. It took a while to get back, and when they did, they found the remnants of life preservers and wooden planks that were floating, but they did not see any sign of the Edmund Fitzgerald. They eventually would find the Edmund Fitzgerald. They never recovered the bodies of the 29 men. But if you go to the IndyCar race in Detroit, which obviously I have done each and every year, along Jefferson Avenue in Detroit, just before you get to Belle Isle. Belle Isle is the island where IndyCar used to run. Now they run, obviously, the street course through the streets of Detroit. But when they do so, they pass by if you've been to Belle Isle, there is a church right there. It's right next to the tunnel that goes underneath into Canada if you're going to get your ketchup-flavored potato chips. Not that I wouldn't have done that, but right there is that church is the Maritime Sailors Cathedral. And the Maritime Sailors Cathedral is where they held the service to honor the 29 that were lost. And as Gordon Lightfoot says, the church bell chimed, and it chimed 29 times, once for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. So that was 50 years ago today. There have been obviously many a shipwreck over the oceans and over the Great Lakes over the years in this country, but few would be as famous because of that song from Gordon Lightfoot, the Canadian singer, as the Edmund Fitzgerald on the 10th of November, 1975. Colts with a big win in overtime, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat against the Atlanta Falcons in Berlin. And it comes on the heels of something that I thought about in relation to college football that I had seen just hours before. Get back into all of that on the other side here. Aquarian Company, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Back tomorrow. If you are just joining us on the program, Kurt Gerald's capably filling in here today. And Eddie, now you got the call, Kurt, when out of the bullpen? What time did you get the phone call?
Yesterday, I was in the middle of a wedding, videographering a wedding, and I was going to have a good time. It was my cousin's wedding, and the next thing I know, I had to put the drink that was in my hand down so I could make sure I made it on time.
Well, we appreciate that. So what happened was yesterday, Eddie Garrison, our friend Pat Sullivan of Sullivan Hardware up there at 71st and Keystone, and anybody knows, and there are obviously a multitude of Sullivan locations, but they does Sullivan the holiday train ride, and people love it. Kids in particular just go crazy for it. And they do I would assume, some sort of an ad campaign. I think this is a television campaign. I'm not sure which, but Pat Sullivan, and this guy's, you want to talk about being somebody that can look into the future. We all knew that it was going to be chilly today. I don't know that anybody knew, other than the folks at Sullivan, that we were going to see measurable precipitation today. But nonetheless, they knew that was going to happen, and my understanding is they wanted to do some sort of videography, to use that word, Kurt, of filming commercials or some sort of spots or advertisement or promotion for the holiday season at Sullivan. And with that, they wanted, and I think they were kind of playing off of, like, adult elves that you see in movies and characters and things like that. And Eddie, it kind of fits the role. And so they actually asked Eddie if he could go and be a part of these holiday spots that are running for Sullivan and the commercials, dressed in his elf outfit. And so Eddie today said, hey, do you mind if I take the day off and Kurt will fill in for me? And I said, no, not a problem at all. And that's what Eddie's doing, enjoying the snow. Now, the snow itself is something that we did not anticipate it. It was a little bit of a surprise today. And there are two ways to look at the snow. The first would be you could look at it and you say to yourself, this is beautiful, and there's a level of like a calming effect to it. And you could also look at it and say, but it is perhaps forecast of things that you need to be prepared for moving forward here heading into the winter. And I think that was indicative of so many aspects of the weekend of sports in Central Indiana, which began on Friday night with Purdue playing Oakland in basketball, the number one team in the country, Purdue. And yes, Trey Kaufman-Renn is a huge part of what the Boilers want to do, but in that game against Oakland, who we know is always going to be well coached, but you're going up against a team out of the horizon who has been a very good program, but you're ranked number one in the country. You anticipate that things are going to go more seamless for Purdue than they did. They got really good play down the stretch, and they hit some big shots down the stretch to extend out and give themselves double-digit breathing room. And, Fletcher Lawyer hit a couple of big shots for them. But nonetheless, they dropped from number one to number two. And right there, you're like, whoa, like there are some things that Matt Painter, I'm sure, wants to get shored up or just get ironed out. And that's what the preseason is for. And then you go to Saturday. And a couple of things that came into play before we get to the Colts about Indiana and Penn State on Saturday. Number one, Indiana, for the vast majority of that game in Happy Valley, did not play well. And yes, it is true. Like I saw the pregame interview that Curt Cignetti did, where, he's asked, well, Indiana has not won in Happy Valley. And he says, well, this group's never played here. Okay, but what gives you concern about Penn State? We're past the point of concern. We go out there now, we make plays, we win a football game. I get what Cignetti's doing. I get what he's saying. I also understand that if you are somebody who is a fan outside of Indiana, if you're a fan of any program other than IU, you see Cignetti in that interview, quite frankly, as, yes, there is a confidence that has to come with being the head coach at Indiana, undoubtedly. And what he has done is beyond miracle worker. He should not only be the coach of the year this year in college football, he should be the coach of the decade. Right? I mean, unquestionably. The guy is, what he is doing is no one expected. He is the snowfall of November 10th. Nobody saw it coming. But I also understand that when you have that level of bravado about you, you better back it up resoundingly, or else people are going to come out of the woodwork. And that's what happened that I found fascinating. Indiana in that game against Penn State, they trailed the whole game. Fernando Mendoza, not trailed the whole game, but they were leading most of the game, actually. And then Penn State comes back, takes that lead, and Indiana's got to go the length of the field. And they had to go the length of the field partially because of an interception that Fernando Mendoza had thrown. And Mendoza, who because of his efficiency, his poise, his not once but twice leading his team late in games down the field when they need a score and being able to do it, those things have put him in the conversation of Heisman finalist, Heisman candidate, Heisman frontrunner, whichever way you want to look at it. That's all well and good, and it's fabulous, and it's well-deserved. But in that Penn State game, for the vast majority of that game, Penn State was able to get to and rattle Mendoza. And he threw a costly interception that theoretically was going to cost Indiana not just that game, but the chance potentially to host a playoff game or get a bye or stay ranked within the top 5, whatever it may be. Because Penn State, while they were admittedly a preseason top 10 team, has completely, the wheels have come off their year. They are going out there. They've got an interim coach. They've got a backup quarterback. I mean, everything that can possibly go wrong has gone wrong for Penn State. And Indiana finds themselves where they've got to go the length of the field in under 2 minutes, and Mendoza gets absolutely blasted on the first play. And then he starts to make plays. And yes, part of it were fabulous catches by his receivers. No question. He was bailed out on a couple of plays by great catch. No question. But to have that poise to go down there and look in command, and Mendoza looked in command. And he's down his best receiver, his primary and favorite target, and Elijah Surratt is not out there. He has with him, yes, he has guys out there with him that he is familiar with, but not necessarily. Omar Cooper he's familiar with, right? We know this. But outside of that, he is throwing to, if you look at late in that game, and if you look late in that game at that last drive, and even before that, one of the key plays in that game, Charlie Becker, who's a sophomore, had, I think, 8 catches for Indiana going into that Penn State game. And he basically doubled his season production. And yes, and he made one catch that was phenomenal in that drive. But then the play that was made to win the game, the catch by Omar Cooper Jr. was perfect in every aspect. It was a slightly overthrown football, but it was also overthrown to the point where only the receiver could get to it. The vertical leap of Omar Cooper Jr. is the most underrated part of that play. And everybody's seen the play by now. And the body control to get the left foot down and keep the right foot up so that it doesn't touch out of bounds prematurely and negate the play. The official to sit there and stare directly at it, all of it was the perfect play, the perfect execution. And it allows Indiana to find a way to win. Now, great teams find ways to win off days. And Indiana found a way to win on an off day. And then something happened in my mind that I thought I would never, ever, ever see. After the game, everyone, from Gus Johnson and the part that you could understand, and nationally speaking, literally the narrative of every single person involved in college football, from television to radio to print to social media, everyone was saying that was a Heisman moment. That was a Heisman moment. Now, does that mean that he emphatically won the Heisman? No, a Heisman moment means if this guy's to win the Heisman Trophy, that's the play right there that they're forever going to talk about. When Desmond Howard had the punt return and did the Heisman pose, that was his Heisman moment. When Charles Woodson had a key interception for Michigan against Ohio, that was his Heisman moment. There are moments of guys' careers where you look at it and you say, just like when you watch a great movie and you see an unbelievable scene from an actor or actress and you say, if they're to win the Oscar, that's what they're going to play when they're walking up to take the stage. That's their Oscar moment. And for Mendoza, in what has been a remarkable year and an incredibly, for the most part, consistent year of high level of play and efficiency. The Illinois game where Indiana absolutely demolished Illinois on national television in prime time, and he was, 23 or 26 for 5 touchdowns? And then the Penn State game, again, a nationally televised game, and everybody, when Indiana started to go down the field, literally there were numerous things you could see where people were saying, okay, if you're going to win the Heisman, it better be, then you're going to have to go out there, and if you are an elite level quarterback, if you are a first round pick, you take your team down the field, and that's exactly what he did. And then I started seeing it all over the place. I simply sent a thing that said, that's the greatest catch in the history of Indiana football. And I even said, albeit consider the history, but that's the greatest catch in the history of Indiana football, meaning there ain't a lot of history there. It's like being the tallest member of the Lollipop Guild, admittedly, but nonetheless, it is a fabulous play. It is the greatest catch in the history of Indiana football. And social media-wise, the responses were from Ohio State fans. Oh, great. What, you mean something in the 1991 Copper Bowl wasn't as great? That's exactly what I just said. Yes, there's not a lot of, but nonetheless, that is an unbelievable play. And I don't care who it is. If Ted Ginn Jr. had made that catch, if Marvin Harrison Jr. had made that catch, if Chris Carter had made that catch for Ohio State, it would be on a wall somewhere in a bar in Columbus. It was that great a catch. I don't care who it's for, and especially when you consider what was on the line for them. But Ohio State fans started coming out of the woodwork, and Ohio State fans were coming out and making the case for their quarterback, who against Illinois, for example, had a very average performance, truth be told. But Ohio State fans were coming out of the woodwork to discredit Indiana, to discredit Mendoza. And I do get that Indiana is led by a coach that when he took the job started out by saying Ohio State sucks. Actually, he said Purdue sucks, and so too does Ohio State. I understand that bravado means that you are going to get things coming your way. I totally understand all of that. But what I found truly amazing was for Ohio State, who is the reigning national champion, who has NFL stars all over the place, who is sitting there watching a quarterback who is down his best receiver, who is down half his offensive line, leading his team to a victory when they most needed it, and their immediate reaction is to push their chest out and continue to pontificate and boisterously and vociferously push out about the superiority of Ohio State, of which no one is questioning. Ohio State's ranked number 1 in the country. They're the reigning national champions. And how does it come to be on the weekend that Indiana moves past Northwestern because Northwestern lost and Indiana won, and so therefore Northwestern takes the title back and the throne back as the losingest program in the history of Division I college football? In Indiana, lowly Indiana, who has now the second highest number of losses in the history of Division I college football, is dancing in the head of Brutus. Indiana is in the head of Ohio State. I never thought I'd see it. I never thought I'd see the day where Ohio State fans, who literally, if you were on the Titanic right when the water was about to hit your chin, if the guy next to you had gone to Ohio State, his last thing would be, by the way, do you know I went to Ohio State? Yeah, I get it. You're an Ohio State fan. Great. Ohio State fans spent their weekend jumping up and down to anybody that would listen to them, arguing about their superiority of Indiana football. Indiana, who owns the best win so far this year in the Big Ten, on the road at at Oregon, is the best win in the Big Ten. They got Wisconsin coming up and Purdue, and then theoretically They go into the Big Ten title game against Ohio State. But as I was thinking about all of that, and I'm sitting there incredulously reading all of this stuff from this totally insecure, unjustifiably fan base of Ohio State, as I'm reading all of it, then at 3:48 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, I get this brain dropping that I never thought I'd think. I never thought I'd think it, but it hit me. The brain dropping hits me where I say to myself, is it possible that Penn State, who's looking for a head football coach, is it possible that Indiana is the best job in college football as a head coach? Not has done the best job, is the best job in college football. Because in the NIL era and in the transfer portal era, yes, Penn State has all the tradition. Penn State's got 110,000 every single game and whiteout and all of that, and it's in a fertile recruiting ground. But at the same time, at Penn State, you are constantly living up to the pressures and the barometer that was set by one coach in Joe Paterno. And there's scandal there. And I loved Joe Paterno for the 98% of the time that he was at Penn State, as did most people. But if you look at Alabama, or you look at Texas, or you look at even Florida, there are multiple coaches that have been there and left footprint. If you look at the jobs that have never been able to match up to it, Indiana in basketball, and yes, I know Branch McCracken had a lot of success there, but Indiana in basketball, Nebraska in football, those programs have one coach that became larger than life, that became part of the culture, that became synonymous with that university, and it's impossible for people to live up to it. Ohio State, for that matter, I mean, Ohio State, Ryan Day, is he chasing Woody Hayes or is he chasing Urban Meyer? There are multiple things there, and so you just kind of settle in, and I give Ryan Day a ton of credit because when the going was tough because of the Ohio State fan base that wanted that guy out, whether you believe it or not, Buckeye fans, you wanted him out. But rational, not always the word we use to describe the fan base. But because he couldn't beat Michigan, you wanted him out, and then he goes and wins a national title. And from Indiana's standpoint, I look at that job, and in today's era where you can flip things, and Indiana was ahead of it on the transfer portal NIL stuff. And they go out and they get Kurt Signetti, who won at a smaller level and brings with him 18 players or whatever it was from JMU and brings this culture shift. And now at Indiana, you have the ability to make $10 million a year. You're chasing what? I mean, Bill Mallory was a great principled man and a very good football coach. But at Indiana already, you're chasing Kurt Signetti. The Indiana fan base is such that they're going to give you whatever you need at this point. You've got $10 million, you've got facilities, you're adding on to it, and you have a fan base that is all in, and the expectations are none. Zero. Is it the best job in college football? Of course, I don't think that Indiana football is up there with the others. But in terms of if you were to ask a coach, it is a situation like in Indiana that they would most want. To go to a place that gives you an open pocketbook, an open facility renovation, whatever it is that you need, and then says the only thing we're not giving you is a ton of pressure and expectation to win 10 games now. Now, that's going to change for Indiana, admittedly. The fan base is going to become accustomed to it. But when you look at what happened in Happy Valley, is Penn State a program now that has become Indiana basketball or Nebraska football where you are chasing something that can't be achieved and will never come back because of the portal NIL era? It changes the complexity of all of it. All of it. And for Indiana, what you saw was a great win. But like I said with that snow that happened earlier today, with unexpected beauty also comes the forecast of potential challenge or problem. And in Indiana's case, that challenge or problem is going to be the expectation continues to increase. And what does that mean year in and year out? And when you have a coach that is saying, like he did, Curt Cignetti, in the pregame, and the things that he said about Ohio State, as soon as there is any light coming through that armor, people are going to come pouring in against Indiana. You already started to see it Saturday night. And for the Colts, the unexpected beauty of an 8-2 start, the unexpected aesthetics like a November 10th snowstorm or snowfall, of the beauty of it and looking at it and saying, this is wonderful. But at the end of years, in the end of seasons, when teams have their season come to an end, oftentimes, it is a microcosm of the season that does a team in. And the Colts and their unbelievable pre-bye start of 8-2 and a stranglehold on their division and what looks to be an inevitable top 2 to 3 seed in the AFC, and at this point still locked in for the number 1 overall seed. But the schedule gets a little bit tougher, and some of the things that come with an 8-2 start and kind of backpedaling your way into the bye. I know they got a win over Atlanta, but having to basically snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, having to get a great drive at the end of the game, those things are great. But there are things that popped up where the snow looks beautiful, but it also makes the road a little more slippery. And 8-2 looks beautiful, but it makes things a little more challenging coming on the other side of the bye, because there are challenges and there are things that are going to pop up on the Colts that have presented themselves in the smallest of fashion. And they give me some pause. And yes, you want to look at it and say, 8-2, Jake, who in the world, if you would have gone back to August and said, listen, heading into the bye week, I know exactly what the crystal ball looks like for the Colts, and it's 8-2 and first place, and by all means you would assume winning the AFC South, I would say, sign me up 8 days a week. But we're greedy, right, as sports fans. And just like right now for Indiana football, you say, sign me up at 10-0 for Curt Cignetti. We get greedy, right? And does that mean that expectation is going to be the same down the road? And the same is true for the Colts. If we're going to nitpick it, there are areas of concern. Jonathan Taylor was unbelievable, and he is the most valuable player in the NFL. I said at the beginning of the year, or a couple of weeks ago when Daniel Jones was clicking and flying at a high level for the Colts, that Daniel Jones was their MVP. And at that time, it probably was the case. But what we are seeing now is the Colts, in the way that they're able to win football games, Jonathan Taylor is their most valuable player and probably the MVP right now in the NFL. I mean, sure, Drake May's in the discussion, right? I get it. I mean, there are other players that are going to be thought about, when Stafford, for that matter, at the way he's playing, that are going to be in the conversation, but Jonathan Taylor's one of them. But just because you're heading into the bye, you've got a little bit more time to think about it. There were a couple of things that I worry about as the microcosm, because with the snow comes treacherous stuff, and you know that it means forecast of potential problems ahead. And the Colts might have a couple of them. We'll address that, and I would like your thoughts on what you saw over the weekend at 239-1070 as well, if you'd like to join the program. We'll do it on the other side here on The Fan. 10 words or fewer, on the Expos Twitter in terms of your thoughts on the Colts season to this point. And the overwhelming sentiment simply was, this is where I thought they would be, but are there areas to be concerned? And look, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I'm going to do exactly that. You're 8-2. The AFC South looks like, barring a collapse, it's going to be yours. Schedule now, you have the bye week, then it's Kansas City, and then you go back-to-back with the AFC South. With Houston and Jacksonville, you can really separate yourself at that point. But the areas to me that would give you, if you will, concern. Number one, the inefficiency in the red zone. They had, I believe, 4 trips to the red zone where they got nothing out of it. And yes, Jonathan Taylor bails you out of that with big-time plays, okay? And Jonathan Taylor was brilliant yesterday. He was brilliant. Zero complaints in regards to that. But what Taylor and his big plays can mask is the inefficiency otherwise. Daniel Jones has been so good at taking care of the football that you now wonder what's going on in terms of the inability to do exactly that. And we started to see the face of the other side of Daniel Jones. And that somewhat is indicative for the Colts themselves of, will the real Colts please stand up? Yes, they are still the Colts in the fact that they're winning games. But the things that they were doing so well for so long are starting to go away a little bit. And now all of a sudden they're a team that's a little more careless with the football. They're a team that is not executing in the red zone when they need to be. They're a team that is not getting consistency in the kicking game. That's kind of been a problem all year long. But Michael Badgley yesterday, that again, area of concern. And teams at the end of the year when they lose, it is always a microcosm of the things that glimpse themselves that you managed to hold off over the course of the year. And you combine those things with no DeForest Buckner, which I think, and you don't know when DeForest Buckner is going to be healthy and back. A neck injury, that gets sticky there, right? And Sauce Gardner, I thought, gave them a different wrinkle and look because of the fact that they could press a little bit more. I thought that the lineup in terms of, especially in the final, the overtime for Atlanta, Sauce Gardner, once he was getting a little more comfortable in there, it allowed you to be a little bit more aggressive and kind of taking away that side of the field as well. And that was, you like that. And Tyler Warren made not one but 2 really big plays for them at the time when they most needed it. But the little things that we talked about for the first, say, month and a half of the year that we thought were taken care of are starting to show themselves, not at this point as fatal errors, but they can compound and they need to be addressed. To the phone lines we go. 239-1070 is the telephone number. We'll begin with James. James on a snowy Monday. What's up?
Not much. Just trying to recover from this weekend of football and just how it made my heart go to levels I didn't know it could.
Yeah, in just about every game, right?
Yes, and I'm calling on it, the IU part of it.
Okay.
And one thing I like about our current coach is going forward, I think he has the ability, along with his assistants, and we have to keep them, to find the talent in the portal and then turn around and cultivate it. So I think going forward, we're in a good spot. The other thing is he has a great system, as far as I can tell, to bring players in, and as long as they buy into the culture, and he makes sure to get players who buy into the culture.
Now, James, you just hit on it there.
We're doing great.
You just hit on it there, James, and I think you make a great point in terms of players that buy in. Because the one question I have is this, and that is, right now, Indiana's entire mantra, I think, to a great extent, and one of the things that Curt Cignetti has been able to tap into in guys is push the buttons of showing that they have something to prove, right? And getting guys. Indiana's roster right now is predominantly guys that were overlooked through the process. They ended up at JMU, or they were players that did not get the offers from the Texases and the Alabamas. And so therefore they have this vendetta, right? This something to prove, chip on their shoulder. And how does that change Indiana's culture if, in fact, you are elevating to the point where you're getting guys coming in that have already proven it through the recruiting cycle and already are aware of the fact that everybody believes in them? Steve is up next. Steve, what's up?
Hey, a little bit more information about the Edmund Fitzgerald, if you're okay with this.
Yes, sir. 50 years ago today, the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in Lake Superior. I mentioned it earlier. Yep.
Right. There's a museum called Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point, Michigan.
Far northern Michigan, correct?
Right. And we happened to be up there this summer, and they have quite a bit of the museum, or one of the buildings, devoted to just this topic and like that. And then this afternoon, actually, there's a memorial service as we speak going on for the general public, but then a private one for the family tonight at 7.
The ship bell of the Edmund Fitzgerald is in said Shipwreck Museum. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
I'm using I don't know if I'm using the right terminology. The bell,
yes,
the bell off of the Edmund Fitzgerald is in that museum, correct, Steve?
It is, and they've got a little film about it in one of their buildings. One thing that's kind of a interesting point about it is that it actually, as they present it, happened in Canadian water, and so it took some time before it was worked out between the U.S. and Canada to actually go exploring and be able to go down and find remains. It didn't happen, well, and probably the technology wasn't there at that time anyway, and the ability to do that. But it took a few years working out with the Canadian government and American government to be able to go and get the remains that they could.
Well, and I also know, Steve, I appreciate the call. There is an anchor on Belle Isle in Detroit, just outside of the Maritime Sailors Cathedral. There's an anchor that is on display there for the Edmund Fitzgerald. It is not the anchor that was on the Fitzgerald at the time of its shipwreck, but one, again, the Edmund Fitzgerald was in commission for 18 years before it went down. So one of the anchors from it is there as well. I've always wanted to go. Tracy Foreigner and I have said forever we're going to road trip up to that museum in northern Michigan, so I appreciate the call on that. Ryan is up next. Ryan, what's going on?
Yeah, hey, Jake. Was just calling in on the Colts game and getting your thoughts, and I'll hang up after I ask my question about the uber aggressiveness with which we seem to operate at all times of the game, regardless of score, in terms of going for fourth downs where you are eschewing 3 points to for the opportunity at 7, or in our case yesterday, 0 on 2 occasions in a game that was, coming down to the wire against an offense that wasn't clicking on all cylinders. It's not the 2000 Rams or the Mahomes-led Chiefs. So I just wanted to get your take on our coach's decision.
Well, no question.
Always go for it on fourth down.
No question, Ryan, because I talked about the red zone, and I appreciate it, the red zone inefficiencies, and somebody sent me a thing that said it was less red zone inefficiency and more red zone coaching inefficiency. And there's probably some truth to that. I think it's a combination of two things, as Mike Chappell said. One is a confidence, and Shane Steichen's whole MO, I think, is to, hey, I believe in my guys, and I'm going to push forward, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to coach them by continuing to tap into the confidence I have in them. But you also have to be realistic as to game situation, and at times it is my belief, Ryan, that the aggression based and rooted in the confidence can then become offsetting because you are, in fact, not going strategically, as you'd mentioned, with what is the smarter play. And you have to wonder as well with that how much of that is a non-confidence in the kicking game. in terms of the overtime, Taylor bails you out with that. Obviously you go right down and you score, right? But yes, there were situations prior to that, and even you almost wondered, like in the overtime on a fourth down, if they'd had it at the 15, would they have gone for it instead of just kicking the field goal and walking off? And I'm being facetious. But yes, I think it is because of the fact that Shane Steichen in his coaching style is to believe in guys and pump them up and push them up. But you also wonder, Ryan, if that does not take one too many spins at the roulette wheel, which in fact can be the kind of thing late in the year that then you look back on and say that's a microcosm that presented itself and was never shored up. I don't disagree with the subliminal statement you're saying there. Jonah at 239-1070. Jonah, you're up. What's up?
Hey, Jake. How you doing? It's been about a month.
Jonah, I'm sure you are missing Arizona when you see the snow outside, right?
You know what? Yes and no. I mean, Arizona winters are nice, but it's good to be back home.
Fair enough. All right, what's on your mind?
Well, good win yesterday against the Falcons team. I know a lot of people are like, well, they're 3-5. Well, this is also a desperate Falcons team that's trying to fight for in a weak NFC South. So, in my opinion, it's just a very good win on a big stage. I like Shane Steichen as a coach. I think he's very good at XYZ, but I do think Jonathan Taylor built him out yesterday.
I would agree with that.
My biggest gripe on Shane is he is one of the worst clock management coaches in like the final 2 minutes I have seen. I thought he was worse than Frank Reich, and I thought that was saying a lot. But there's just some of the head scratchers and in-game adjustments. Just sometimes I'm just like, why? But
well, Jonah, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I would say when it comes to that. I think Steichen is a high energy, like believing it. You could see it in the post-game stuff that he talks about and when he addresses his team. I think he's very laser focused, like, what do they say? He's all ball, right? But I think when the arrows are flying, he gets caught up sometimes in the speed of that. And that goes back to the previous point of I think sometimes then he's thinking too far ahead and not thinking in the moment. And that comes with time, right? I mean, it does come with time, but a fair assessment nonetheless. Lastly, Martin. What's up, Martin?
Hey, what's up, Jake? How you doing, man?
I'm all right, thanks.
Hey, I'm not sure if you touched on this earlier in the show. I couldn't turn it on until about 2 o'clock. Did you hear the news about Buc-ee's?
I did hear there's a Buc-ee's coming now. Is it? And I didn't know. And this is Martin. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm very torn on this. Now, it's just south of Indianapolis, right?
Yeah. I live in Greenwood, and it's at Worsville Road and 65. So
okay.
Greenwood, Whiteland area.
So you've been to Buc-ee's before, obviously, right?
Yes.
Okay. Buc-ee's to me, and I love it. You've heard me talking about Buc-ee's till the cows come home. My only thing is this. I worry that Buc-ee's is eventually going to get cocky, and it's going to put itself somewhere along I-69, which would be immediately in the way of the Quarry Gas and Gulp. And the Quarry Gas and Gulp, if you're not familiar with it, between Bedford and Evansville on the Redneck Autobahn, as JMV calls it, not a lot of gas stops. And the Quarry Gas and Gulp is going to have clean bathrooms, gas, combos, fountain drinks, and dip. That's it. That's all we're going to sell. That's everything you need, right? And the Quarry Gas and Gulp, I think, is going to be hit a little bit by the Buc-ee's that came here. Now, here's the thing about Buc-ee's, and what I'm about to say is blasphemous, even blasphemous to the Jake Quarry of the recent past. I do love it. Buc-ee's is one of those things, though, it's a little bit like eggnog or whiskey. You love it, and then all of a sudden, once you realize you've had too much of it, you're like, yeah, I'm done. And that's it. And then, like, and Buc-ee's, while it's great, then you realize, you're like, wait a minute. This is basically like every Quick Stop that I've been to, except for it's on steroids, and they put their own label on stuff. Like, you buy something, and you're like, I'm pretty sure these are Pringles, but it has the Buc-ee logo on it. Now, they make their own brisket. They got rattlesnake jerky. They got homemade fudge. They got belts you can buy for $85. They got jeans. They got, pajamas, all of it. And all of it is super fun and super cool. And the bathrooms are immaculate and absolute. The bathrooms are so good that there might be times that I drive from my house down to Buc-ee's just to use the bathroom. I'm not going to lie about it. But it also gets to the point where you're like, wait a minute. I'm on the road. I'm on a road trip. I just need to stop, use the bathroom, get gas, and go. and the gas is not any less expensive. It's the same price as everywhere else, despite the fact they have 462 pumps. But, yeah, it is cool. People will enjoy it. It is fun, and it's one of those things that you go 3 or 4 times, and then after that, you're kind of like, you know what, like it's a little bit too much of a time draw on my trip. But it is cool, and it's coming to Indiana, and I do wonder how much the novelty then wears off for people when it's right there in your backyard. Remember when Krispy Kreme first came here? Remember when Jack in the Box first came here? The line was wrapped like around the building, and then after a while, people were like, yeah, whatever. They got them all over the place, right?
It's very similar to Raising Cane's, too.
Yeah.
Cane's showed up. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen, too.
You know what I mean? Like, when it first hit, I mean, look, Krispy Kreme, man, when they first hit, it was like lines wrapped around for blocks, and then after like 6 months, people are like, yeah, okay. And I love Krispy Kremes. I'm talking about the freestanding ones. Same as Jack in the Box. We'll come back, find out what J&B's got cooking. We'll do it next. But I was coming in today, and, of course, I had to knock the snow off my boots while I was walking into the building. And then doing so, I almost slipped and looked down and realized that there was a little tent and a sleeping bag in the corridor of the building. And it dawned on me that's where J&B spent Saturday night, because he was doing the J&B takeover before he had to do the pregame show and had about a 2-hour window to do so, and just said, I'll just stay here.
Sweet weekend I had. You want to trade?
Sure.
You went to the Noblesville Boom, didn't you?
I did, and here's the thing. I went to the Boom game on Saturday. Beautiful, beautiful facility. It looks just like the Fishers Event Center. Kyle Guy looked really good for the Boom. They did I'll tell you, the price, I think the tickets I saw were $16.75.
Yeah.
Not a bad seat in the house. Beautiful facility. The only thing I would say, if you are going to go to the Boom game, and I saw Tony East mention this as well, give yourself plenty of time, because where they built that arena, John, it's basically one lane road going in with a roundabout and then one parking garage. So it backed up a lot. I mean, we gave ourselves time. We got in there in time. But it was cool. It was a nice facility, nice venue, and we had a good time.
It's kind of like the Fishers Event Center. It's like the same way.
It's basically that. Yes, it's very similar. Now, November 30th, they're playing the Wisconsin. I think it's the Herd and Victor Oladipo in the G League playing for Wisconsin. So he's going to be back November 30th. Colts getting a win yesterday. Indiana as well. Purdue now ranked second in college basketball after their win over Oakland on Friday night. What's lined up for the big show, John?
We'll do Bob Kravitz, I think, about the Colts in Berlin yesterday, and Tucker DeVries from IU is going to join us, who had a hot shooting first half, and IU looked good offensively.
They did,
It's really both sides of the floor look good.
When you score 100 against a Shaka Smart team, I don't care. Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. I don't care how much they might be rebuilding. I don't know much about Marquette, but that was impressive.
Yeah, all new team too. So those guys look pretty connected. This early in the season.
They do. They have very good ball movement. And understanding of one another.
But I've never had him on. I've seen him play a number of times, obviously at Drake against Indiana State and 1 year at West Virginia. So be exciting.
He broke your heart many a time when you were
at
Indiana.
Man. Well,
Indiana
I'm going to have to
right?
say that, too. I was right there courtside when he just 27-7, that MVC title game. Brutal.
I saw him score his 2,000th career point against Alabama A&M to start out the year for Indiana. All right, John's up next. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.